All right, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking about menthol bans, nanny states, and social media bias on episode 293 of the In the Tank podcast. As always, I am your host, Donald Kendall. Joining me today, I've got somebody you'll recognize. A couple of you might not. Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute. How are you, good sir?
I'm fine. Who wouldn't recognize me? I've got the best hair on this podcast, bar none.
Everyone will recognize you. It's the next two schmoes that probably won't.
That's right. That's right. Hey, everyone.
Cameron Sholty. He is the Director of Government Relations here at the Heartland Institute. Nice poster behind you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm here. Glad to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. And a fresh face for the show. We got Chris Talgo, Senior Editor at the Heartland Institute. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Really, great to be on here.
Super excited. I can tell. So Jim, what do you want to start off with? Should we do the media bias stuff first? Should we kick that towards the end of the show? I'm going to leave it up to you. Because you're heated. You're heated. I don't know if you need to ramp up to talk about it, or if you, putting you on simmer is just going to make it worse at the end. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it's pretty important to talk about the Facebook ban of Donald Trump, or I guess I should say maintaining the ban on Donald Trump. And actually, what a farce the Facebook supposedly what do they call it? The Oversight Board, supposed Oversight Board of Facebook, which actually, as a matter of fact, we're actually live streaming this on Facebook right now. So maybe we'll get banned during the broadcast.
After I read Trump's messages, yeah, we'll probably be banned.
That'd be nice. I have to get my little mini Trump out and should put it on screen, and that'll also help us get flagged. But this listeners, regular listeners of the podcast, and Donnie, you shared the episode from May 2020, I believe May 20th, 2020, when we had on the program very, very fine, smart, amiable fellow named John Samples from the Cato Institute. Cato Institute, of course, is a libertarian think tank, much like the Heartland Institute is a libertarian think tank on the right. And he was a member of the Facebook's advisory board, which was designed, if you want to take it at face value, which was designed to have an quasi-independent board determining who gets banned from Facebook, whose speech is restricted on Facebook, and who gets to live life like it used to be on the internet, only about 5 or 6 short years ago. And we had him on the podcast to talk to him about, well, it was a relatively new thing, and what is your role going to be? And we expressed some skepticism, but we were very polite. We were trying to be polite, and we probably should have pushed back. I know, Donnie, you said this earlier. We probably should have pushed back a little harder on him back in May of 2020 on the Oversight Board, because he kept talking about how this is. Well, I took note as I re-listened to some of it earlier. He says people want to see Facebook's content moderation as ultimately legitimate or plausible. It is neither, and it has been neither this entire time. Facebook was suppressing conservative news in the run-up to the 2020 presidential election. Their buddies over at Twitter, of course, banned, and I think it's a permanent ban, of Donald Trump from Twitter. Twitter kept pulled down a legitimate story in the oldest continuously published newspaper in the United States, the New York Post. Pulled down their story about Hunter Biden and his laptop and the dealings with Ukraine and all that stuff. And Facebook follows suit by suppressing news that was inconvenient to Joe Biden in their news feeds. And a lot of people get their news from, or at least start their day looking at their social media accounts to kind of get a sense of what the news is that day. And these things had enormous effect on the 2020 presidential election. And again, John Samples, nice guy, but he went to go in there with basically your eyes closed, not understanding that Facebook and the big media giants are not interested in free speech. They're certainly, what they actually are interested in is suppressing conservative speech, and not radical, crazy conservative speech, not QAnon stuff. They are suppressing mainstream conservative thought, and that's been basically their MO for more than a year. And to sit on everybody on the right side of the spectrum, as they tried to balance out this Facebook advisory board, everybody on the right side of that board should have resigned en masse yesterday for them continuing the ban on Donald Trump. But you know why they didn't? Because the people on the right that they pick for that board don't like Donald Trump, never wanted Donald Trump as president, and are actually just fine with a sitting and former president of the United States being silenced on social media.
Yeah, I think it is kind of considered a indefinite ban. However, the board suggested in their decision that they released that Facebook revisit the decision to ban him permanently after 6 months.
Right.
But theoretically, after 6 months, he could be brought back on. Apparently, that's what we're being led to believe.
How generous.
I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah, I guess what are they waiting for? What are they waiting for? Are they waiting for him to confess? Do they need Donald Trump to participate in a Maoist public struggle session in order for him to get his social media accounts back? He's not going to do it, guys. And so again, for the people on the right side of Facebook's advisory board to pretend that this is anything other than what it is, which is a suppression of the speech of Donald Trump and a lot of people on the right, the people on this advisory board that are not leftists are being used. You're to put a patina of quote unquote legitimacy on this entire operation. They should all resign from that board because actually all they're doing is ratifying the desires and the free speech suppression of their big tech oligarchs, of our big tech oligarchs. This is an oligarchy that is ruling speech in this country. And everybody, like I said, I've said it 6 times. If you're on the right side on that advisory board, you should publicly and loudly resign.
So here's the context of it. So it says the board upheld Facebook's decision to temporarily ban Trump after the riots on January 6th, saying the 2 of the president's posts violated company guidelines. So I've got the 2 posts. Should I read it, or is there going to be fear that our thing is going to be taken down?
Oh, let's play it on the edge. Do it.
Okay. So one of them was actually a message. I think it was just a video. He came out and said this. I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to have respect of our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing has happened, where they could take it away from us, from me, from you, from the country. This is a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. We've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and evil, but I know how you feel, but go home in peace. So that was the first one. The second one was, these are the things that and the events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously, viciously stripped away from the great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home in peace. Remember this day forever. So those are the two things that got him banned permanently. So their reasoning for this is because it says the board found that the 2 posts by Mr. Trump on January 6th severely violated Facebook's community standards and Instagram community guidelines. We love you. You're very special in the first post, and great patriots, and remember this day forever in the second post, violated Facebook's rules prohibiting praise or support of people engaged in violence. So that is the reason why he has been banned essentially forever. So go ahead, Chris.
So I have a real basic question here. So have they implemented the same sort of rules on anyone who was posting Facebook messages about the BLM riots, or anyone who was posting messages in 2016 about how the election was stolen from Hillary, or Stacey Abrams, who still claims to this day that she won the Georgia gubernatorial election? So
no, I think the short answer of that is no. Although this is like the most long-winded response ever for like one of these things. I don't know if they're all like this, but their actual ruling is like 14 pages long. So in it, there's a lot of nuance that they go through. One of those things being just like how popular of a page Donald Trump's page is. They reference him having 35 million followers that are reading these things. So I think that was kind of their justification. If it was me saying these exact same things, I guess according to this ruling, they wouldn't take me down because I've got 5 followers or something, compared to Trump's 35 million. So, I mean, that also, I'm not saying this to justify that, because I guess that begs the question, where's the cutoff? And I think the cutoff, if you look in the community standards of Facebook, is Trump's followers number -1 is the cutoff. So it's,
Exactly.
but you're absolutely right. I mean, all of these things that we're going to talk about today are just laden with hypocrisy. But Cameron, I think this is one example of a larger trend, which is, something that we've been focusing on here at the Heartland Institute, which is this conservative or this anti-conservative media bias. So, like, what's your response when you hear this story?
Well, what's interesting, so as I've talked about this in the past, and actually last time I was on the podcast, I was tuning in and presenting from Florida. When I was in Florida several weeks ago, working on this issue on big tech censorship and encouraging Floridian legislators to address this issue, my hotel was actually just maybe 100 yards away from the state capitol building where I was having my meetings. And as I was walking over, I was on my cell phone and just thumbing through Facebook, and up came an ad sponsored by Facebook, which basically said, we want reasonable regulations. So, well, we all know that Facebook listens in on our conversations and our phones listen to us. But Facebook sends me an ad that in Florida, they want reasonable regulations, which is government and lobbyist bullshit speak. I'm sorry. for don't regulate us, give us more time, and we'll try to tell you that we're going to do something. That's basically what they're saying is we support reasonable regulations. The reality is they don't. What they want is to keep doing business the way they've been doing business because it's lucrative, right? The status quo is lucrative, and they are censoring and deplatforming people whom give them the outsized influence that they have and whose data they trade on to become these vast behemoths in social media. So I personally think the Oversight Board's decision was not the right one. And in setting aside Donald Trump, whether you like him or you don't like him, that's neither here nor there at this point. But what we're facing is seemingly capricious and arbitrary censorship by these big tech companies. And they are effectively, and legislators who are siding with them and not doing anything about it are basically prioritizing Facebook's alleged free speech over citizens' free speech rights.
Yeah, and we get into this a lot when we talk about this topic, but the nuance of Section 230. Like, I logged into Facebook this morning and I saw a post by the Libertarian Party that was like, I forget exactly what it says, but it was basically along the lines of like, let me make it really easy to understand Republicans. Facebook is a private company. They can remove anything they want. And it's just like, okay, but you're not taking into account the whole Section 230 thing, the difference between an open platform and a publisher, and stuff that we talk about on this podcast all the time. Constant listeners will be bored by this, but the idea that if you start taking down, you start curating the stuff that's on there, you start sliding off of being an open platform where anyone can say anything and into the realm of being a publisher. And once you do that, you start losing those protections, those liability protections about if someone slanders or libels or anything like that. So like, that's the big difference here. And I think that like your average person, whether you're on the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle, just like totally ignore all of that. So, I mean, that's kind of the big discussion here, Cameron. I mean, so like, is that like a thing that's being talked about? You have your ear close to the ground on this. Is Section 230 being like threatened, when companies do this and act like a publisher?
Well, it's interesting enough. Section 230 is a liability gift. It is a gift to the Twitter and the Facebooks and the YouTubes and the Amazons. It is a legal and liability gift that they've been given, and it has allowed them to grow. And the point of Section 230 was to allow them to grow. And it does, as you well point out, it gives them certain protections, right? If Facebook and its apologists and legislators and lawmakers and others want to say that Facebook and Twitter has this First Amendment right to censor and deplatform and to remove content, well, fine. Yes, they do. But then they have to forfeit that gift that they've been given in Section 230.
Right.
But right now, big tech wants their cake and to eat it too.
Yeah, Jim, so when I was listening back, because I watched that interview with John Samples that we did that you referenced at the beginning of all of this, and it seemed like the only criteria, and maybe it was boiled down, we didn't get into this deep enough, but it seemed like by his statements that the only criteria that makes somebody a open platform versus a publisher is the way that content gets put onto said site, right? So because there's no gatekeeper, anyone could just make a Facebook account and just start posting anything. That makes you a open platform regardless of the amount of censorship or things taken down in the aftermath. That's what it seemed like to me. That's maybe I'm oversimplifying his position on it, but that's what it made it seem like to me. And that you want to jump in, Cameron?
Yeah, I was going to say, so we've heard this from big tech apologists.
Okay.
Both industry and think tank apologists have said, well, we can't catch everything, so we have to err on the side of caution. Our algorithms catch what it can, and we're catching 2 million offensive posts, so on and so forth in any given day. But it seems to me, now I could be wrong. If somebody wants to tell me I'm wrong, that's fine. But I don't think that Americans' free speech and their expectation that they can share pictures with grandma and Aunt Sylvia and whomever else should be subject to the whims of some algorithm created by some egghead in Silicon Valley. It seems to me that the solution is more speech, and the deference should be not to protect us from harm, but to allow yet more speech.
Right. Yeah, Jim, I mean, what do you think about that? Because, obviously we think that, or some people that share our opinion on this think that once you start pulling down stuff that's not specifically outlined in that Section 230 language, where it's like, violent, obscene, like pornographic, or whatever the terms that are in there, that once you start like going beyond that, you start being a publisher, as opposed to just the way that content is put on a website,
right?
Because okay, so for example, and I don't necessarily want to go down this rabbit hole for too long, but I was just contemplating this idea, this suggestion by John Samples that this is like the only criteria that makes you an open platform. If I wanted to have like a forum called like the Chicago Bears Forum, all I wanted to have was discussions about the Chicago Bears. And then a bunch of trolls came on there and wanted to talk about the Green Bay Packers. And then me, as the moderator of this site, wanted to take down all of that stuff, all of that Green Bay Packers stuff. Now, am I a publisher because I'm taking down that stuff? What do you think?
Well, it all depends on I think maybe. The answer is maybe. As Cameron pointed out before, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996 was created to protect what was then a brand new, it was just really kind of a conceptual thing, the idea of social media. But it really started with, when you were able to leave comments underneath blogs, right? That's kind of where that was the first test case for Section 230. And so it basically said, if you have a blog and then people start, saying things in the comments section that is potentially libelous or even worse, maybe even criminal in certain respects, maybe posting child pornography or something in the comments section, you shouldn't be held responsible for that because you're not doing that. Other people are. Those were the kinds of examples that Section 230 was meant to protect the people that run digital media companies from. It was not to let them decide with either an oversight board or something else that this person's speech will be allowed on this platform and this person's speech wasn't. And basically all the decisions are made based on the politics of the person making those or exercising their free speech on your platform. These are platforms. That's what they are treated as under the law, and they should adhere to that. And there's part of the law in Section 230 that instructs these platforms like social media companies to act in good faith. these big social media oligarchs are not acting in good faith. That is plain to see by everybody. Even some people on the left admit that this is the case, but they don't care because their side gets to say whatever they want, while people on the right are continually suppressed, have their free speech suppressed. What I find really interesting about this entire situation, if you look at Facebook's own justification for continuing the ban on Donald Trump, basically admits that they should be defined as a publisher and not as a platform. And if that's the case, then Section 230 shouldn't apply anymore, which would basically nuke Facebook's business plan from space. But that's not going to happen. That's one of the reasons why the Oversight Board exists. It's to keep the government off their back too, saying, hey man, we have this fair process that, we're being fair. They're not being fair. Everybody knows that. And then we also have one of our, used to be kind of an ally. I guess they're an ally. They say they're on the right. It's an organization called Tech Freedom. I know some of the people there. I used to do back in the early 2000s. I did in mid 2000s. I did tech work for the Heartland Institute before coming here to the main office. But they say that there's a part of their statement here that really struck me yesterday. And they said that the good news, quote, the good news for those who disagree with the Oversight Board's decision is that the government had no hand in it, because government regulation of speech is by and large unconstitutional under the First Amendment. The government has very little say what speech is or is not acceptable online, and we should all be happy about that. Really? Mm-hmm. So I'm supposed to be happy that big tech oligarchs that are working basically as the enforcement arm of the ruling class in this country to suppress certain kinds of political speech. I'm supposed to be happy that it wasn't the government doing this, that it was their right. Basically their like I said, their enforcement arm out there in the private sector. No, you should not be happy about this. Free speech is supposed to be meaningful. It is not. Free speech is not a meaningful right if it is continually suppressed by monopolistic companies like the social media giants in this country. Free speech doesn't really have any meaning. And if you can't have your political speech protected by the government, see, this is where it's kind of backwards. And I think Cameron can speak to this because he's been working with legislators state by state talking about these issues. And some states are trying to actually pass legislation not to force the social media companies to do anything other than protect the free speech of their citizens, the residents of their states. Our free speech is being violated by these big monopolistic big tech oligarchs. And this needs to be addressed in some way. And the Facebook Advisory Board isn't interested in addressing it. Some of these, frankly, I got to say, bought and paid for nonprofit institutes, especially those based in DC, are going along with all of this stuff. And it's really un-American. And just finally, you wanted my rant. Here's my rant. I mean, this is part of the email thread that I was on with you guys yesterday. I find it, the headline, here we go, National Review. That's another discussion. But National Review, their headline was Facebook upholds ban, calls for further re-examination to determine final penalty. Ban, final penalty. I find it really striking how easily and quickly the American people condition themselves to accept the idea that a single private company not only can, but should exert near absolute power on our ability to merely speak publicly or with each other. We would not put up with that if it was the phone company, for instance. For instance, Verizon decided that it didn't like what you were saying to other people on your phone. So we're just going to cut off your phone. You can't have phone service now because what you're saying is dangerous, or it violates our policies. It violates our terms of service. You can't have it anymore. We would never put up with that. But that's what's happening here in the social media realm, where people use it to speak, not just publicly, but also to other people in smaller groups or even individually. And that is being violated. And we're just fine with it. The American people are just cool with this. And so I think what we may come to at some point is that the social media giants are going to have to be considered what are called common carriers, which is what a phone service is, right? That you can't discriminate on about speech. You can't discriminate against speech that you like or don't like, that you have to be completely neutral on it as a common carrier. I think this is probably not where big tech wants to go, but I think this is where big tech should actually end up now, only because they've abused the enormous power they have over political debate in the United States.
Hey, Tony, can I just jump in for 1 second?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
Yeah, so I think Jim brought up a great point, the monopoly aspect of all this. And one of the things that I think a lot of people are just dismissing is the fact that that these big tech companies are not operating in a free market. So the classic libertarian free market argument, I think, is, just doesn't apply to this, because big tech has such monopolistic power. They wield such control over the societal discourse in the 21st century. We've never seen anything like this. We've never dealt with anything like this. And for us to rely on the old free market will always cure, the ail. I think in this situation, as you guys discussed in depth with Section 230, with these companies being insulated when the internet was first coming of age, and that was 25 years ago, and for them to still use these laws to their advantage, I think we're not operating in a free market. So the quote free market libertarian argument here just doesn't apply. It's moot.
Well, also, I think and the podcast will be around. We'll be reporting on this stuff as it continues, because this isn't the end of it. And I really think that the examples of this bias are going to get worse and worse before they get better. So we'll definitely stay on top of this as a topic on In the Tank. But I want to move on to I was going to refer to it as a fun topic, but it might not be. We'll see. We'll see. And that is the menthol ban. So this was a story that was kind of going around last week. We were talking about something else, so we pushed it to this week. But reading from a Yahoo article, it says the Food and Drug Administration announced it would move forward with a nationwide ban on menthol cigarettes and other tobacco products, a blow to the tobacco industry that has lobbied for years to keep sales legal. Those terrible human beings. With these actions, the FDA will help significantly reduce youth initiation, increase the chances of smoking cessation among current smokers, and address health disparities experienced by communities of color, low-income populations, and LGBTQ plus individuals, all of whom are far more likely to use these tobacco products, acting FDA Commissioner Dr. Janet Woodcock said in a statement. There were some facts in there that I was unaware of. I didn't know that menthol cigarettes were popular among LGBTQ plus individuals, but hey, I learn something new every day. The justification for this ban is that flavors mask the terrible taste of tobacco. In fact, flavored cigarettes were banned several years ago, maybe over a decade ago, but menthol was left behind. That was still considered fine, apparently. Menthol actually soothes the throat instead of being abrasive, causing users to inhale deeper, which is worse for you and more addictive. So that's the justification for getting rid of menthol cigarettes. Cameron, you are a current smoker, are you not? What are your thoughts on this?
Hold on.
Uh-oh. Do you have menthol cigarettes in your pocket? Oh, God.
I don't smoke menthols. They're horrible. Okay. But that's not the point of this. The point is, this is a product that legal age adults buy and use. And the FDA has been on a crusade against vaping, which has shown tremendous upside as a smoking cessation device and product. I don't like menthols. They smell horrible. They taste horrible. But with that said, I'm not here for product placement. But I guess if you're going to smoke, you shouldn't smoke anything other than these. Hint, hint.
Oh, God. But anyway, what, are you looking for a sponsorship? This is terrible. This is terrible.
But anyway, with that said, this menthol ban clearly targets minority community, I don't think the FDA kind of let it slip out, right? They are targeting affected and protected classes, minorities, and the LGBT community. They came out and said this is to protect them from themselves. Well, they don't need protection from the FDA. If they are adults, if they can afford to smoke, then they should be able to do it. With that said, again, and I mentioned the vaping. This is just an FDA on a crusade to protect us from ourselves. I mean, if the rationale by the FDA is to protect these affected communities of color, affected LGBT communities, then the next step, and I don't think, and I'm reluctant to use slippery slope arguments, but okay, well then Michael Bloomberg, as mayor of New York, was not wrong to ban the big gulp. Yeah. And the next step is bubble wrapping children. I mean, these are not these are not just simple slippery slope arguments. They are simple, logical A to B to C arguments, and that's where this goes. And if indeed the FDA can unilaterally ban menthol cigarettes, it is only a matter of time till they shoehorn an outright ban on tobacco, which is where they want to go. If I had to bet, you have do-gooder groups that are using this as a test case to see if they can get away with it. They want this to be in court, and they want to find out if the FDA can just ban tobacco use as opposed to having to get a law passed through Congress. That's where this is going, and that's the more nefarious effort behind all of it anyway.
Yeah, Chris, you and I were talking about this, I think yesterday, where all the justifications that I read off of this could be applied to alcohol, like having flavors for alcohol, mask that terrible alcohol taste. I don't know. It's just like, the hypocrisy of this is just like overwhelming. What do you think?
Well, I'm just fundamentally opposed to this on the fact that they're saying adults can't make decisions regarding what they want to put inside their bodies. And they've always said, okay, we're not allowed you to put substances in your bodies that could affect your mood or could affect how you possibly, treat others, like illicit drugs. Cigarettes have no impact on how you would possibly present a danger to society. The only danger is possibly to yourself. So I'm just fundamentally opposed to this because I do believe in the slippery slope argument. And if they're going to say cigarettes are bad for you, what's going to stop them from saying sugary drinks or fatty foods or whatever else they deem is not good for our health? I don't want the government in any form saying we are going to tell you what you can and can't put into your body.
Yeah, I mentioned because Justin and I'm not supposed to say his name on this podcast. The other guy that used to be on the show, we did a video on Stopping Socialism TV about this, about this topic, and the idea of like, well, why can't this justification be used to ban, French fries? And I said, no. If we're going to use the same analogy, if we're going to make an analogy to this, French fries are still legal. You just can't put any condiments on it. God forbid you dip that French fry in ketchup. That's illegal, But it's just so ridiculous.
Or mayonnaise in Europe.
Or mayonnaise, definitely.
Mayonnaise in Europe. They drown them in that.
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
The Heartland Institute has a policy tip sheet about tobacco harm reduction, specifically about menthol bans. And it has a couple of interesting points. One of them is, when they were listing off all the different communities that were, affected by this, Cameron, you're right. It's like they're all adults. They can make decisions on their own. The one that I think would get your average person's attention a little bit more is kind of like the youth smoking, which is already against the law, but whatever. So in this tip sheet, it talks about how youth tobacco rates is at an all-time low. It says in 1997, 36% of high schoolers smoked, and that's compared to 2018, where only 8.1% of high schoolers were cool. So,
Yeah.
It seems like it's a solution in search of a problem. That's kind of point number one. Another point, it talks about how the menthol bans will create black markets. So this is a concern that I found across a number of articles talking about this. It says that a 2012 study featured in the journal Addiction found that a quarter of menthol smokers surveyed indicated they would find a way to purchase, even illegally, menthol cigarettes, should the menthol ban ever go into place. And then it says that due to excessive tobacco taxes, New York City is currently considered the cigarette smuggling capital of the nation. So
we're going to have a booming Lucy market. I'm here for the booming Lucy market.
Right. And
I'm all for Eddie Murphy swinging out the back of a cigarette truck being chased by Detroit cops.
One of the African Americans that was whose death was taken up by Black Lives Matter was Eric Garner. Thank you. What was he doing to draw police attention? He was selling Lucy's on the street. So the idea of making this, again, New York City right now is the black market capital of cigarettes in the world, mostly because of taxes, right? Yeah. Wait till they ban these things. But actually, Cameron, the idea of banning tobacco, I used to say government will never ban tobacco, no matter how bad they make it. They keep making it more expensive. The taxes go through the roof and all of that. I thought they'll never ban cigarettes because they brag about, we're increasing the cigarette tax to pay for school, for education, for kids, or we're, all these great. Yeah, children's healthcare, all of these great things they're going to do. So they keep raising tobacco taxes to pay for these things. Although
I'd rather they just say thank you.
That's right. But Donald, going to modern monetary theory, when the government can just print any money they want and don't have any consequences for it, then maybe we will end up banning tobacco because we won't need the taxes anymore. We'll just print more money.
Yeah, well, I mean, that gets a little bit different when we're talking about state jurisdictions that don't have their hands on the money printing, but they could always ask for more money from the federal government.
Exactly right.
Or they could just legalize marijuana and tax that. So I also find it so hilarious that marijuana, smoking marijuana, in a joint or, in a regular glass bowl is actually terrible for your lungs. Like one joint, I think, has the equivalent of 20 cigarettes, tar. So they're saying smoke all the weed you want. We'll tax you there, but no, you cannot smoke menthol cigarettes. It makes no sense.
Well, going back to the black market thing, so in the Yahoo article, it quotes an ACLU senior legislative council person saying that the organization is concerned that a ban will eventually foster an underground market that is sure to trigger criminal penalties and disproportionately affect communities of color. A different Yahoo article attempted to reassure those concerned that this ban would lead to more confrontations with police and communities of color by saying that the FDA ban would not hang on one second, would not criminalize possession of menthol cigarettes, just remove them from the market. Local police do not enforce federal food and drug regulations. So, right, this would probably be enforced by like the ATF, who have never had any violent interactions with, citizens before. So we should all be rest assured that this isn't going to lead to more violent confrontations between people and police officers. So that's the point that they're trying to get across. It's just kind of just kind of ridiculous. But it all kind of boils down to the idea of the nanny state, right? And that's kind of the larger conversation I wanted to have about all of this. Chris, you already kind of mentioned a handful of these, or maybe it was Jim, the soda bans and the sugary taxes on sugary stuff and all of that. And it just seems like this is the latest and greatest example of it. Cameron, you mentioned the idea of this eventually going to be extended to all tobacco. Do you think that that's the trend? Do you think we're going to move more towards that, or is this just kind of an anomaly?
Oh, you're asking me. I think tobacco is going to get banned.
You really do?
If when this ban is challenged in court and the courts decide the FDA has the authority to ban a particular tobacco product, the FDA will swiftly, I'm certain, under a Biden administration, seek to ban tobacco products wholesale.
Doesn't that seem like the opposite, though, of the this is what's like surprised me so much about this menthol ban. It's like, because Chris, you had mentioned it, marijuana, legalization, the end of prohibition on marijuana seems to be a trend that we have seen for at least the last 15 years, maybe longer across the states. And it seems like this is just completely the opposite. So
exactly.
What is with the, like, these two things don't mesh? I don't understand it. Can somebody explain it to me?
I can't get over the cognitive dissonance here. So on one side, they're saying we think you should be allowed to put inside your body, a substance that is bad for your lungs, bad for your heart, blah, blah, blah. But on the other end of that spectrum, we will not allow you to go into a convenience store and purchase something that, yes, is, not good for your health. But you know what? It's a stress reliever. And for a lot of people, it's a relaxing thing to do. They're not harming anyone but possibly themselves. Let them do it.
And as Donnie points out, it's cool. I've been arguing this for years that on the scale of cool, if I didn't smoke, I'm teetering on the bottom half, but it pops me into the upper 60% of the cool scale. But here is Andy. Cue the picture. I have seen the future. This is a picture of the future of the cigarette trade. Andy, throw up the picture.
What's the picture? Oh God.
Eddie Murphy
selling cigarettes from a hijacked truck. That's it. That is the future of cigarettes in America.
Is that from Beverly Hills Cop or 48 Hours?
That is Beverly Hills Cop, which came out 30 years before Chris Talgo was born.
Wow. True.
So yeah, the nanny state. So I've got this other article, and everything we talk about is linked in the show notes if you want to read it in depth. But I have this article from FEE, which is why is the nanny state so popular? So it starts off saying that bans on plastic straws, soda taxes, bans on diesel cars, the crackdown on smoking, restrictions on alcohol consumption, the list of restrictions on people's personal freedoms is steadily increasing. But why is the nanny state so popular? And it goes through a bunch of examples of all of this stuff and how it's portrayed in the media, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the article, it says the nanny state is popular because people have lost trust in their own abilities to make their own decisions for themselves, not because they actually have lost them. Governments feed on the idea that irresponsible individuals, because confident consumers won't accept the mere existence of paternalism. If we want to defeat the nanny state, we need not only oppose the individual policies that governments introduce, we also need to empower individuals to believe in their ability to act as responsible individuals. So I think that's probably a part of it, but I think that's only a partial answer. I think that it has far more to do with people wanting to superimpose their own standards on other people. It's not that they lost trust in their own abilities to make decisions. It's that they distrust other people's ability to make decisions for themselves. What do you think about that one, Chris?
I completely agree with you on that. I'm struck by how many people nowadays, whether it's mask mandates or anti-smoking, they're so concerned with telling people what they should do, how they should do it. And I remember when I was in college, you could actually smoke in bars and restaurants and stuff. And in the last 20 years, it has gone in so much the other direction, where now if you are a smoker, you're shunned as some sort of terrible person. And once again, I mean, this is the United States of America. It's the land of the free. If you choose to smoke, or if you choose to eat donuts or drink Coke, Coca-Cola, you're not hurting anybody. It's a decision that you're making for yourself. Why are we even having this discussion?
Jim, I mean, how about you? The author of this seems to be like, this is people seeking a paternalism in the government. I'm suggesting that it has more to do with like a not even a soft authoritarianism, like a flat-on authoritarianism of other people. What do you think it is?
Yeah, well, I think it's either on Facebook or Twitter. I have on there under my my tagline that I'm in the "Leave Me Alone" caucus, right? And it seems to be shrinking all the time, the "Leave Me Alone" caucus. But as you guys were talking, I looked this up on C.S. Lewis, famous quote by the great thinker and author. He says, "Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience." And that's the world. If that doesn't perfectly encapsulate the world we live in right now, especially with all these, with COVID now, with everybody and their mother is a COVID scold, and telling people to put masks on outside and all that stuff, that to me, that is, there is an oppressive, like a violently oppressive tyranny, there would be hope at one point that the people would become so oppressed and so angry that they would eventually throw off their oppressors, right? At some point.
Yeah.
When you are oppressed for your own good by scolding, people waving their finger at you, the tendency is to just put up with it and try to get on with your life. But what happens is that you start running out of places in society in which you're allowed to live your life the way you feel like it. And one of the things that's really frustrating about the nanny state is that, as you pointed out earlier, the nanny state, the scolds do not equally distribute their scolding. If it is a public health risk to have more smokers, which actually I joke with Cameron about this a lot, he's actually doing us all a favor from a public health standpoint, because he's unlikely to live long enough to spend the last 20 years of his life stressing the healthcare system and with drugs and all that stuff. So keep it up, buddy. You're doing.
But being cool is the trade-off.
It's the trade-off. So, it's be cool. Live fast, die young, and still have nice hair. That's the way to go. But but if that's a public health risk, and I saw this, I have a friend who had mentioned on his Facebook page that again, he's been pushing people to get the vaccine. By the way, I got the Moderna a week ago. And so, I'm on board, everybody. I'm not, but I'm doing it for different reasons, not for the reasons that the moral scolds are telling me to.
Please clap.
But yes, thank you. Fantastic. But his argument was that this is a public health issue, that you need to get it to protect the rest of us and to make sure that the vaccine goes away, that the virus goes away. People like us in the leave me alone caucus would argue that look, if you have the vaccine, you're protected. You should not care at all whether or not I get the vaccine. And we should be able to just go about our lives, and I will live with the consequences of my decisions, and you will live with the consequences of your decisions, and we'll just move on in society as a free country. It used to be live and let live. Let people just make their own choices. If they make bad choices, they make bad choices. And if that's none of your freaking business.
Well, here, let me ask you this.
We live in a world where everybody's in everybody's business. Social media, frankly, to wrap it all the way back around to where we started, social media actually encourages you to get in other people's business and to tell them how to live their lives. I ignore it all.
So, Jim, let me ask you this. Let's frame it this way. Let's say you were responsible. First off, do you care that Cameron smokes cigarettes?
I don't care at all.
Don't care at all. If you paid for his healthcare, if you were responsible for paying for his healthcare, would you care that he smokes cigarettes?
Maybe slightly bigger chance that I might care or not. Probably not.
What if Cameron weighed 300 pounds and was diabetic because I ate too many cheeseburgers? Then would you care?
Oh, well, yes, I would care a lot. But I get what you're going at here. But I forgot to bring that up to the thing. It's like, if we're going to ban cigarettes, then every McDonald's should be shut down tomorrow because obesity and being overly large causes a lot more health issues than, say, not getting the vaccine.
And in COVID, far more obese people died than smokers died.
80% of the people hospitalized were obese.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
That's such a good point. And, I like Jim, also got my vaccine a couple days ago, and I did it for a variety of reasons. But I was thinking to myself as I was sitting there, getting that shot, and I was wondering, do all these vaccine, Karens, do they go up to everyone who's in McDonald's who is, morbidly obese, and sit there and say, you should not eat that hamburger, you should not, have that side order fries?
Yeah,
I never do that.
You're stressing our healthcare system, and you're stressing our chairs.
And like I said before, and to all the other points, right, is as a smoker, how about you say, hey, for your limited time on earth, thank you for paying so much extra in taxes. And then again, when I die, send a few extra flowers saying, hey, thanks for not taxing the healthcare system on your way out the door.
Well,
a simple thank you as opposed to the scolding. Because, as Clement Freud, the British writer, once said, if you resolve to give up smoking, drinking, and loving, you don't actually live longer. It just seems longer.
I'll put a thank you note in the condolence card to your children one day, Cameron, and I'll say you told me to do it.
You send them a couple of bucks.
I actually, I want to loop back to the hypothetical questions that I was giving Jim, because I had a point there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But there was I don't know who to attribute this to, but it was a libertarian thinker that was that wrote something about how, like, if you really wanted to encourage people to take better care of their bodies, allow them to sell their organs like after they're dead.
Yes.
Because what's the point of being buried with a nice, healthy pair of lungs? You know what I mean? So that's a side point.
That problem.
Hey, the Heartland Institute's all about market solutions to problems, and I think that's a perfect one.
Right. But the reason that
I do not donate blood. I won't donate blood. I've got O positive blood and will not donate it until I can get paid for it, because I got the good stuff.
You could, you could sell plasma, I think. So there's
that. Is it tiger blood, like Kelly Sheen?
No, okay,
Winning.
but the reason why I asked Jim those questions is because this stuff starts to get more justified the more collectivist our systems get, our healthcare systems get. You know, if Cameron's a smoker and he is solely responsible for paying for his own healthcare and all of that stuff, I don't think anybody could care less. You know, nobody could care less what you're doing to your own body. But if we're in a system where the collective, you know, a single payer system, universal healthcare system, where the collective has to pick up the tab. Now, this is kind of pre-modern monetary theory thinking here, because they could just print money forever. But where the collective is responsible for your healthcare costs, then that brings up the justification for them to tell you how to live your life and to be more healthy. So I think as we get more towards a collectivist system in healthcare, we're going to see more of this stuff. We're going to see more bans. We're going to see more restrictions on alcohol consumption. We'll see the tobacco ban. We'll see more restrictions on the type of foods that people eat, and it'll be nationwide and not just in your kind of liberal centers like California and New York or anything like that. I don't think any of you guys are going to disagree with that, but to kind of accentuate that point, I have this article from the UK government that is new obesity strategy unveiled as country urged to lose weight to beat coronavirus and protect the National Health Service. So to Cameron's point that the people that are most affected by COVID are the obese, the UK is acknowledging this, and to help fight against that, they released a raft of new measures which have been revealed to deal with the country's obesity and to get the nation more fit and healthy to protect them against COVID-19. So these include a ban on TV and online advertisements for food high in fat, sugar, and salt before 9 p.m. The end of deals like buy one get one frees on unhealthy food, and the end of candy at the display counters, end of candy displays at checkout lines at like grocery stores. Calories to be displayed on menus to help people make healthier choices when eating. That includes alcoholic drinks, which will soon list hidden calories, and a new campaign to help people lose weight, get active, and eat better after COVID-19.
I hope this is no way to live. This is a horrible life to live and not worth living.
This is just the latest example. There are other restrictions, other rationing things that are in place in the UK when it comes to healthcare, and some of them are based on whether or not you're a smoker, whether or not you are overweight, that you'll be put at the back of the line when it comes to like certain surgery procedures or in vitro fertilization, stuff like that. So yeah, this is happening in the UK where they have a very collectivized healthcare system, and it's happening more and more. Obviously, I wouldn't expect, especially if they start running into more budget shortfalls, you'll see more rationing and restrictions and stuff go into place with this. And like I said, as you know, our system here in the United States gets more towards this direction, we'll be seeing it more in the United States. Jim, what do you think about these UK restrictions? Are they proof of my point, or are they just like an anomaly because of COVID?
No, they're proof of your point, and they're proof of that quote by C.S. Lewis. It's who is himself a subject of the crown. Look, this is why the Heartland Institute and people on the right and other think tanks over here on this side of the political spectrum resist at every single turn more government control over. It doesn't even matter what it is. more government control equals control over you eventually. Frankly, I'm surprised it's taken this long for the what do they call it, the NHS, National Health Service in Britain, to start basically punishing people for the wrong lifestyle choices. This is the nanny state on steroids. They start off with what they sell as a public good, which is the fact we're all going to have free healthcare, that the state is going to take care of you to make sure that if you get sick, we will make you well. Now that is, of course, transformed into, no, we must force you to make yourself to stay well. We will now punish you for making the wrong decisions in your life and having any choice. Freedom is always better. It doesn't matter how much they promise you in government goodies. Freedom is what you give up. And I don't want to give it up, and you shouldn't want to give it up either, because freedom is what's paramount. Freedom respects you as an individual. Collectivism doesn't treat you as an individual at all. This is where this always leads to. Canada is having that problem. You don't even have to look all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to see this stuff. Canada is having some of these policies put in place right now. There are people that are forcibly locked down into quarantine if they come back from another country in Canada. And some of these places are not publicly known where they even are. This is where it always leads to. The more power you give government, the less freedom you're going to have. And the government, by the way, never gives you back that freedom. They never just say, this is temporary, don't worry about it. You can go back to the way you were a year ago, 6 months ago. This is why the Heartland Institute on this podcast has been pushing hard against all these COVID restrictions, because, if we don't push back, there's no chance we'll ever get our normal lives back. There's no chance we'll ever get our liberty restored. So you have to fight it as it's happening at every single stage, because that's what's always at stake.
Yeah. I call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think in the future, we talked about COVID vaccine passports, right? You have to walk around with this proof that that you've been vaccinated so that you can get into a Costco or something. I think in the future, we'll probably see it in places like the UK first. Eventually, there is going to be some type of app that tracks your exercise and your diet and all of this stuff. And then based on your health social credit score, it'll determine the tax rates that you have to pay to fund the NHS. I think that's where this will eventually lead to. And when I've actually posed that to people that are in favor of universal healthcare, it's like, this is the future that you're kind of like marking out for us. Some of them say, yeah, that sounds good to me. So to me, that's kind of proof that this is like the future that we're looking forward to. Again, I don't know how long it'll take, but in this day and age of COVID, I don't know, things are moving faster than I would have ever imagined. So yeah, gentlemen, we only have a few minutes.
Donnie, can I just bring up one real quick angle on this?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. So when I was a teacher, one of the things that I noticed was a lot of the high school students that I was teaching were much more inclined to view government as the caretaker, and I know that they're teenagers, they're naive, but I was kind of stunned at the lack of skepticism toward the government. And I think that we've been doing that for decades, telling these kids that the government's good, it's benevolent, it's always there to help you. And I think that too much of the population views the government as their caretaker, and they're willing to do that. That's why I feel that it's almost inevitable, because so many people are willing to shill individual responsibility for the government take care of them. And like Jim said, collectivism is the antithesis of individualism, and I'm worried that just generations from now they will accept that as part of the like the American bargain.
Yeah, right. It's like menthol cigarettes are bad for you. Why does the government allow it?
Exactly.
That's the mindset. That's the knee jerk in this day and age.
Yeah, the younger generation, you hear that all the time. Everything that they don't like or they think is bad should be banned.
Right.
And everything that it's not just millennials and Gen Z, but it's the idea that everything that you think personally or as a generation that is bad should be banned, and everything that you think is good should be mandatory. That's not America. That's not the way we're supposed to live. You're supposed to live your life the way you want and leave everybody else alone. That's as good as it gets for a human being in civilization. Yeah. And we can't seem to hold on to it.
Yeah, on Earth Day, Greta, there was some quote where she was scolding our world's leaders, saying like, how long do you think you're going to be able to get away with this? It's like, get away with it. Like it's just like allowing the free market. They're not like, they're not putting one over on anyone. But that's
get away with it. Come stop me. Come stop me from driving my car. We'll see how that works out.
All right, that's we're running out of time here, gentlemen. Anyone got any wise words of wisdom? Any anecdotes anything they want to get off their chest before we wrap it up for today? Hearing nothing. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for this episode of the In the Tank Podcast. Join us every Friday for a new episode. Please subscribe, write a review for us on Twitter. No, not on Twitter. On iTunes. It'd be greatly appreciated. Don't follow us on Twitter. It's socialist. It's lame. If you would like, though, you can send us your comments, suggestions, questions to the show by emailing us at inthetankpodcast@gmail.com. Jim, where can the fine people find you?
You can find me at Jay Lakely on Twitter, at Heartland Inst on Twitter. And always remember, resist the oligarchy.
Okay, great. Chris Talgo, is there anything you want to pitch? Any places people can find you? I know that you often write articles. Is there any place that those frequently publish more than others?
I would just tell people to go to heartland.org and read all the great stuff that we post and stoppingsocialism.com.
Fantastic. Way to plug that. Cameron, GR, where can people go to find the work that you guys do?
We do have Facebook page and Twitter. We're Heartland GR.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you next week.